The model train industry has changed significantly since the height of the pandemic, and there has been a huge amount of people joining the hobby. In the clinic, we will chat about what types of new modelers are out there and how to get them to join the NMRA. We also discuss what other clubs have been doing to stay active.
But my clinic today is post-COVID-19 model railroading. So we're going to be talking, a lot about how the hobby has changed, since the height of the pandemic. So the first thing I want to talk about are what are the key things that stood out during COVID for model railroading. And the first thing was Zoom meetings. We got to meet with people from across the world, what we're doing right now. We got to see the rise of virtual groups, and we got to connect with people from across the world that we really didn't get to do pre-COVID. So with Zoom meetings, what we're doing right now, right, we have presenters from across the world, and you get to be part of another club virtually. You get to see what another club does on a day-to-day basis, right? With virtual groups, you got to see a new type of model railroading club that we haven't seen before. Cheaper, more involved, right? You see the Jim Kello group who has meetings twice a week. You see OPSIG, and you also see Colorado Narrow Gauge, and I know a lot of you guys do that on here. And another thing we saw with younger people is we saw rail fanning network groups, meaning you're going to see that modern style modeling and rail fanning and going out in your local communities. But the whole point of that is that we got more options during COVID, right? You got more of an option than just one of those once a month in-person meetings, right? You got to try your style of hobby. So if you wanted to try the TCA or the NMRA style, you absolutely could. And if you wanted to, you could try the rail fanning network groups, that modern style rail fanning. But one thing that we didn't really realize is that since everybody was locked down and nobody really wanted to do anything, and everyone really kind of got bored of Netflix, they kind of got bored of watching all the movies. And so what happen is that a ton more people joined the hobby. So now we have all these new modelers coming in. And what we're seeing new styles of the hobby. We're seeing new elements being put into place, right? But the issue is since there's so many new people who rapidly join, they don't really know that we exist. They don't really know that NMRA or TCA exists. And so the big question today and what we're going to be talking about is how we get those new modelers to know that we exist. How do we get them to join our organization? That's what we're going to be talking about. So the question is who are these new modelers? And these new modelers that we're going to be talking about today is the casual modeler. But if we look at what the casual modeler is, we first need to look at sort of what the industry is. What is the industry of model railroading? And we're going to start at the 10%. And the 10% is basically us, right? We're the 10% of model railroaders who push the hobby forward, right? It's the TCA, the toy train collecting side, the NMRA side, right? We're the ones who are very active in the hobby and are pushing it forward, and also a lot of the manufacturers. However, right now, because very few people were active on social media, train shows were shut down, is very much becoming almost a closed community because there's not a lot of outreach. And then this is sort of the next category. This is the casual modeler, right? They make up 25 to 45% of the industry, right? Our goal is to try to get them to come in here and maybe grow that 10%. But who is the casual modeler really, right? We know there are a whole bunch of new people who join. But it's really a whole bunch of people who are new, who are very much an intro person. They might have a layout, but they don't really know what to do. They want to get trains on it. They want to get their track down. They want to start doing beginner stuff and want to start getting involved in something. And we do know a little bit about them, right? They might be interested in rail fanning. They definitely want to join a club because they're new. They want to find those resources. And they can be young from retired because with social media, we're seeing more modelers come in that way. But the number one big thing is they don't know about the 10%. They never heard of the NMRA. And what happens, what is this casual modeler? What do they make up? What's the target audience? And most of the people who joined over COVID, about 75%, right, are 60-plus-year-olds, right? That's the majority of model railroading, we know that. 20% is the 35 to 55-year-olds, right? Sort of the parent age wanting to do something with their kid. And then lastly, 5% of this new group is 14 to 25-year-olds. So sort of my category, sort of interested in having a grandparent in there and wanting to get involved. But the whole point of this clinic is how do we reach this casual modeler? How do we get this green and make this almost 15%, right? That's what we're going to be talking about. And so how do we attract them? And there's really three ways that we attract them, right? The number one is social media, because if you think about it, the world was shut down and most of the things we do are on social media. We're seeing Facebook and churches live streaming on it, right? We're seeing events getting on there. We're having Zoom and stuff like that. The next thing we're going to be talking about is trade shows. Once we're back in to sort of a normal society, how do we reach out to them at trade shows? How do we attract them? And then lastly, the word of mouth. So we're going to jump into social media right here. And the first thing you do, and this is sort of intro, right? We're not going to go full steam into this, but the first thing you do is how to attract them is your division gets a Facebook page and also an Instagram account. And once you have those, what should you post? How do you get people to join, right? The first thing is club layout, sharing that you're active, sharing that your members and division members have a layout, showing them what you do, right? Club updates, showing them that you have a meeting or somebody else got an MMR, showing them that you want to be active in the community. Because if you look at it from their perspective, they don't know if you're not active or you're just not interested in new members. And then lastly, posting about events, showing people that you're really active. You really want to gain new members. But like I said, the casual modeler is new, right? And we already went over this slide. About 75% of them are 60-plus-year-old men. So 75% of our time on social media should be marketing to them if we're looking at the market. 20% is mostly that parent age. And then lastly, that 5% of being on there is to your younger individuals. But if we break it down by those things, 60-plus-year-olds really like club photos. They love trade shows. And another thing is they have a specialty. They sort of know where they're going, right? They either grew up with the American Flyer or they grew up with the Colorado Narrow Gauge. They sort of know what they're going to go into. Dads really like club photos and trade shows, right? But another thing is they like the DIY stuff. If you ever go to your son or son-in-law's house and something breaks, he's probably going to want to fix it with his own tools, because that's sort of the stage that they're in. They sort of have a little bit of time, they sort of have a little bit of money, and they sort of kind of want to get into a project with their kid. Moms, I'm not going to really talk about this because I usually do some of this is for trade shows, right? But they're interested in for family fun events, right? Meaning they're the organizers. They want to bring and do things with their family, and they want to bring their family to things like trade shows and open houses. And when I mean by family, they want to bring multiple generations with them, right? The grandparent age, the dad age, and also sort of the young age. So if you track moms, you're actually marketing to 3 people in one, which is really interesting. And then lastly, 18 to 25-year-olds love club photos. They really like rail fanning. And again, they like train shows. So how do we market to each group, right? We talked a little bit about how to, but it's the wording of posts, explaining what it is. If you go out and say, hey, we have something about Thomas the Train, you're going to really attract young kids, right? And so that goes with the photos and also the different events. But it really comes down to just basic marketing skills. So you can unmute yourselves if you want to. So let's look at this photo. If we send this out online, who are we marketing to? If we send this out online, who are we marketing to?
We're marketing to moms and families because it's a railroad museum.
Yeah, you're exactly. Yeah, you are marketing to families, right? This is actually the Frisco Museum. You're going to see that in 2023. What about this guy? Who are you marketing to in this? Who do you want to attract with this photo?
I'd say that's the dads.
The dads.
Yep.
This could also be scratch building, right?
Yep.
This is Mark. This is this is one of the narrow gaugers layouts. What about this one? Who are we attracting with this?
That's probably the dad as well, because he's starting to build something with his kid.
Absolutely.
Or,
dads or beginners.
Yep.
What about this guy? Who are we attracting with this one? We're here attracting the 60-plus-year-olds.
Yeah,
Sort of that have that specialty, the toy train collectors, right?
that's true. Toy trains.
What about this one? Who are we attracting with this one?
I think teenagers.
Yes, the plastic buildings, the modern engine, sort of
Yep.
basic, sort of casual, absolutely. So if we break it down again, right? 60-plus-year-olds have that specialty. They know if they want to go American Flyer, Lionel, or if they want to go advanced modeling, right? Dads like that DIY stuff. Moms like family fun events, and the 18 to 25-year-olds like that rail fanning. Let's look at this wording of post. So if we look at this one right here, join us for our scratch building competition. The theme is the Colorado narrow gauge, and make sure to bring your model to show the judges. Who are we attracting right there?
You're attracting people who are already in the hobby, because when we were relatively new in the hobby, scratch building
advanced modelers, right? What about this one? Join us for our intro to model railroading clinic. We'll also be having a tree making clinic, and later it'll be rail fanning as a group.
I think any age on that one.
Any age, mostly intro, right? Just beginners.
Yeah.
I was gonna say
Casual
that's your
modelers.
25-year-old.
What about this one lastly? Come join us for our annual train show. We'll have family fun events in Thomas for the kids to ride on.
That would be mom.
Yeah, exactly, right? That multiple generations, right? And multiple generations means you could attracting 3 people by marketing to 1 person. But if we look at this is just Train Rivers, and I keep up their social media for them. But as you can see, this is just the rail fanning thing. Hashtag Next Gen Rail, showing people just rail fanning stuff. Oops. This is just another one, the Colorado narrow gauge, one of our members on it. Let me use the photos. Here's another example of the Plano train show, showing that we're active. We're wanting you to get involved. Come join us. And if you read down here, I'm going to circle it with my red pen. Come join us. Plano train shows this weekend at 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. and 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Stop by the NMRA booth, showing that we're really active and we want the local community to come out and support us. Let's look at this one, for example. I want to talk about, just for this one, if we look at NMRA, I'm not going to go into this at all, but just to show you, if we hear all the stuff about NMRA, who are we really attracting when we send out NMRA stuff? Let's look at this guy, chip paint with wax paper. If you're a casual modeler and you're a beginner, you really don't know what you're supposed to do with that, right? So you're marketing to more advanced modelers with that. Selling model train inventory on the internet, okay, that's people who have been in the hobby and they're about to get out. So you're not attracting to any new members there. More Australian layouts? Yeah, I think a lot of people would love to see that, right? And then building the historic Cook covered bridge. I'm not sure what that is, but it is, but it should, and I don't think a lot of newer people would. And so that would be more on the advanced side. So if you look at NMRX, they're marketing to members and more advanced members within the NMRA. So very, very small amount of people. Let's look at this example I sent out pre-COVID. This is a great event to go to and learn how to create your own personal model train layouts. Right there saying, hey, if you're open and you're wanting to try something new, come talk to us, come join us. We'll also be talking about other family fun events in the Dallas area, saying, hey, if you want to go to more train events, come join us because we're going to talk about them. If you're looking to try something new or just want to get involved in model railroading, then you're in the right place. Meaning if you're new, if you're that casual modeler that we're talking about, this is great. We want you to join. We want you. There's no pressure here, right? We will be having a clinic presentation on realistic backdrops or backgrounds for your layout. So that's sort of more of the advanced model, the more of the people that are in the hobby and just a tip or trick, right? So you're marketing to a lot of ages there. So just an example, just to show you, if you look at Facebook, most of the people on Facebook are above 54 and above and 65 and above. So if you send stuff out on Facebook, you're going to get a lot of older people. Instagram, way other way. You are marketing to 54 and under, right? So those are the two things. So if you want to attract older people, go to Facebook. If you want to attract people under the age of 55, you start going on Instagram. So those are the two things that we do. A couple things with post-COVID, and we're going to transition into a train show soon. But I do want to talk about what have I seen after COVID, because in Texas, we're in person again. We're ready to go, right? People are still see our meetings, but they're kind of unsure, right? Before COVID, we got maybe 1 to 3 people per meeting that were new coming off of social media, right? We're getting a lot of people who are unsure. right? They don't know how big or small our meeting is going to be, so they're not really coming. A lot of it, and another big thing I want to point out is the 10%, and we talked about this a little bit beforehand, right? The name recognition for these national organizations and for these clubs are almost non-existent, because all these new casual modeler people do not know about them. And so name recognition for a lot of train shows, a lot of local train shows, you might have issues with name recognition, but that's just one thing that I have seen, right? It doesn't mean it's there, but just one observation I saw, right? How do we reach these guys? 45 to 65% of the hobby. We don't really talk about this. I talked to a lot of train shows about this, but 45 to 65% are called the social event goers. They really just go to train shows or a museum, and they go there like once a year. They're not interested in joining a club. They're just there to sort of have fun. If you see a lot of train shows, 50% are families, right? They're not interested in joining a club, but they're interested in going to train shows. When do we market them? With train shows, right? But if we look at the industry, I want to talk about this for a second. We all start out at social, going to one event per year. We then jump to casual, and we hope to get at the 10%. Or if we look at it this way, manufacturers and train shows, what has happened in the last couple of years, they're responsible for getting people into this social category. They're responsible for getting people into this casual category, right? Getting them to come to a train show or seeing their thing online, buying a train and hoping to start a layout. Clubs and organizations, right? We're hoping this casual modeler jumps in the 10%. We would love to see this 10% of clubs grow to like 15% of the industry, right? And so our role is to get that casual modeler into the 10%. We want to help them jump, or use a yellow brick road across from it, right? If we're using some old movie references. But the whole point is, let's get this casual modeler who's new into the 10%, because we're all going to start at a casual modeler at one point. You never start out as an MMR. You always start out at the bottom, right? But recap, right? The number one way how we gain members from social media: coming to train shows and signing up at your booth, members coming to your club meeting, signing up directly online. What does it do, right? Diversifies the way you gain members, right? So let's say we have another pandemic, we don't have train shows. This is a great way to continue to gain members. It might not be as much as a train show, but it's still a good way to keep you afloat. It does form relationships. It does get you into, it can allow you to get into a local magazine. It can allow you to get into a national magazine. But I want to talk about something a little bit more fun that's not just about social media, because I know a lot of people don't really like that. But I want to talk about train shows, because I think everybody can relate to this. What do we see in this picture? Can somebody tell me, what do we see in this picture right here? Does it look like a whole bunch of train layouts and you can't really tell the difference?
A lot of trains in boxes.
All right. Can you tell me if what club this is and what club that is?
No.
No, you can't, right? What about this one? What stands out here?
Better signage.
Oh, MTH, absolutely, they stand out.
MTH,
This is the
certainly.
Minneapolis one. What about this? Do we see what vendor this is? What vendor every individual table is? No. So the whole point is, if you're a new individual who just joined, can you tell the difference if you walk into a train show, if the difference between TCA or NMRA? Not really, right? They look like one club, right? If we look back here, this club is Advanced Modelers, this club's Line Out. You can't really tell that from those photos, but to regular member, or excuse me, regular casual modeler, they're very much a beginner. So the message for train shows is, hey, let's stand out, right? Let's be this big, white, ugly building that you might be able to see at 2023 when you come to Texas, because it's right across from the Frisco Museum. But a great way to stand out is saying, hey, let's actually do things that interact with the individual. Let's do things that say, hey, here's our benefits. This is what we do. Let's do something a little bit different than just saying we're the TCA, we're the NMRA, we're the NHRS, because everybody does it, right? It's not just one organization. Every organization does that. And so a great way to stand out is being interactive with these individuals, giving out stickers, right? Having everybody to see something, handing out trees, because if you hand out a tree to a little kid and they walk around, you're going to get a lot of people saying, hey, where did you get that tree? And they're going to come to your booth. And that's a great way to get a lot of traffic to your booth. And every single person that comes to your booth is a potential member. Everybody who walks by. Another great way is test track. We don't see a lot of test tracks at train shows. Put one on your booth because that's going to get a lot of traffic. And if they're buying a train, they're probably a casual modeler. Let's talk about the Dallas area. So every person who attends, like I said, is a potential member. So one thing I want to mention is I've been doing most of the recruiting at the booth since I have 16. So I'm 19 now. So it's been like 8 train shows or something. And on average, and we're smaller train show guys, we average about 15 to 20 new members per train show. So let's look at this. We don't have a booth. We have sort of 4 tables that are stuck together. So the green over here represents the membership booth, the magazines, everything like that. And I usually like to sit over here and just talk to these guys. So here's me. We have the gray over here, which means mini clinics. So we have a couple of MMR scratch building right here and doing little miniature clinics. And we get a lot of foot traffic over there saying, wow, that's cool. How'd you do it? Well, sign up and come to our meeting and come over here and talk to our membership guy, right? Interacting, standing out, right? And you're seeing these beautiful MMR buildings. That makes you want to come join a club like that, right? Dark blue is a contest. We have a switching contest right here for little kids and grandparents to just come and do stuff. And we're like, hey, if you're interested in joining, come talk to the membership stuff with the magazines. And lastly, black, we have test tracks. We see you're buying a new train. If you want to know how to repair it, come join, come talk to the membership area. So that's a great way to be very interactive, a great indirect way to get a lot of foot traffic towards your booth, right? And another thing I want to point out is everybody loves a magazine, and everybody loves that you have a member published in that magazine. And the one thing I want to see more of is more of those those printed magazines with actually our members in there, because that's going to make people want to go join our club. Because if you have an MMR right here and he's doing something and he's in that magazine that you're giving them, that kind of makes you want to join. All right, next one. I know I talked a lot about that. Here's the booth, right? We have the magazine. I would love to see some more print magazines. And one thing is this one, do not give this to casual modelers. These are marketing to club presidents for insurance. And so if a casual modeler sees that, he's going to read it and walk away. And we've had that a lot. So don't give these out. These are for club presidents. Don't do that. At the show, I talked to about 100 people. They're all casual models. Last January. Actually, I get a school credit for every time I go to a Plano train show and clinic. So that's why I like doing it. Everyone I talk to is a casual modeler, not a social goer, the one who wants to get into that 10%. Everybody who wanted to know about the partnership program. This is something that we really take for granted and we don't use, right? But if you're an in-show individual who wants to join, who wants to get involved, you absolutely want discounts. And really, this should be promoted even more. Meetings. Everybody want to know what type of meetings we are. We're going to get to this in a minute, right? Hybrid, virtual, what is it? Events by divisions. What is your clinic schedule? That's a big thing because we didn't put a clinic schedule on there and people walked away. Agenda for divisions. What else are you going to do? Everybody absolutely loved the magazine. I'd love to see more printed magazines. And layout tours. Everybody wanted to go see an MMR layout tour. Everybody wanted to see that. They saw some of the members in the magazine. They absolutely loved it. They would love to go see them, which is awesome. Wanted help building a layout. Wanted that one-on-one mentorship. One thing I found really since I was 16 realizing is phrases to stay away from the casual modeler. Number one, AP makes you a better model railroader. If they haven't heard of the NMRA, they're definitely not going to know about the AP program. Same thing with MMRs and same thing with NMRAX. All these words, they have no idea what it is. And as soon as you say it, they will walk away. Even though they're great programs, they will walk away because they've never heard of it.
They're code words for insiders.
Exactly, they're code words for insiders. And if you go on social media and you see people, the divisions we have NMRX on their booths, they don't get a lot of new members that way. Use language they know, not what NMRA clubs use. Things that casual modelers do not know / care. AP, MMR, tedious scratch building things, NMRX, and clinics. One big thing about clinics is that if you think of a clinic, you think of a veterinarian clinic, you think of a medical clinic. Switch it with presentations or workshops or seminars, something that they can connect to. Let's look at this graph, for example. This isn't a graph. Model railroading is considered a niche. We are an extreme niche. We are in the 10% of model railroading. So NMRA and TCA make that up. Within the 10%, we have a smaller category that is a super extreme niche, which we have the AP program, scratch buildings, and toy train collectors. How would these guys know what this is if they don't even know what NMRA is? So that is another visual representation explaining I love that code word thing of why not to use those code words for that. Even though they're great in AP, and we'll talk a lot about AP because that's the number one way you keep people involved is the AP program. But if we break it down, a great way to connect with these people, because this is going to have a lot of similar themes, that's what I like to do, is talk about what they like. 60-plus-year-olds have that specialty. Dads like DIY. Moms like family fun events, and 18-25-year-olds like rail fanning. You're at a membership booth, talk to them about those things because that's what they're interested in. Word of mouth. One thing I want to talk about word of mouth. This is going to be interesting. There will be people that are not interested in the actual train. They're interested in electrical engineering. They're interested in design. They're interested in history. Associate trains with something else besides the train, right? So if you're in mechanical engineer, associate it with designing, right? That's a great way to get people who aren't really hooked on trains into the hobby. Another big, and this is a great example, is what does model railroading have to offer me? And this is a cropped image, and I need to go change that. But if we look down here, there's a lot of things that model railroading can do. Planning, implementation, research, development. There's a lot of other things that NMRA has. We'll talk about that later. But like I said, I get school credit for doing a clinic like this. There's a lot of indirect things that NMRA and model railroading has to offer. Word of mouth. Why do grandparents, why do they leave? Why do grandkids leave? This was in O-Scale National Magazine, I think 2 years ago. But why do they leave? Is because you associate trains with Thomas. You associate it with something else and they don't like it. Example, my grandpa is a antique gun collector and he likes cars. I associated model railroading with guns and cars. So I am still in the hobby because those are kind of cool, right? If you associate it with Thomas, they're not going to want to join because Thomas is not really fun until it's really fun until 5 years old, and then after 5 years old, it's absolutely not, right? But associate trains with something else to get them in the hobby, right? Like I said, I'm using NMRA I got into the NMRA and the hobby, and I'll say this later, is because I needed something else for applying to colleges. Am I on a local division board? Absolutely. So I associated trains with something else and allowed it, and it helped me to do different things in my life, right, that I wouldn't really do. And I can explain that later. I don't have a slide on it, but there's a lot of things that are interesting. But the whole point of that is the casual modeler connecting and getting this casual modeler and growing this to the 15%, hopefully. I want to talk about retaining because this is the second segment and this is sort of the downhill part. We're almost done, don't worry. When we're talking about post-COVID-19, right? During COVID, we had options. more than a once a month in-person meeting, trying your own style, TCA or NMRA style of the hobby, right? And this was at the beginning. When we're transitioning from virtual to in-person, we need to find a balance. So our question is how do we find that balance from transitioning from virtual to back to normal in person? And the answer is creating options for your members. Hybrid clubs are a great example. They are half online and half in person. And currently they are popular with college kids. Well, they've been popular with college kids for the last 2 years because they've been in remote areas like, let's say, Lubbock, Texas, where they're 6 hours away from the nearest civilian. They can start things earlier, meaning they started going back to hybrid a year ago. And the benefits of a hybrid is it allows you to be both in person and see it virtually. You can do it when you're busy or you're far away. And if you have to quarantine, you can still participate. Let's talk about college campuses and student groups. Like I said, they could be doing this earlier. Currently, right now, college towns and student organizations are 2 to 5 years ahead of the 10%. And everybody is going, whoa, why is that? Because one, they had an earlier start, right? They had a way earlier start than you guys. I think you guys are still locked down a little bit, right? If we look at a couple of student organizations, which we're talking about, they implemented this hybrid version of both in person and online a year ago, like I said. Let's talk about Focus. Focus is a fellowship of university Christian students. They're organized like NMRA. Each school is a division. It's a little bit different on college campus, so you will need to use your imagination a little bit of how it equates to NMRA, right? They have weekly meetings instead of monthly, and they have 200 to 1,000 attendees per meeting with very little budget, and it's run by college kids, meaning that it's run by college kids. They have very little business experience, and they're getting 200 people to show up per meeting, right? And I'm going to tell you, the meetings aren't that fun, but they're expanding. They're talking about, if I go on to their meetings, they're talking about how they're expanding to TCU, right? And so they're very ahead. This is a great example of an organization that's very ahead and very interested in pushing the boundaries and trying new things. And so because they are younger, they are more advanced with technology. So this is a great example of what you're seeing and what a good post-COVID-19 sort of group is, because they've expanded because of COVID, because of how quickly they were able to implement a hybrid thing and get back to in person. Question is how do we transition from virtual to in person? Is giving people options. What are great things to do in person besides a monthly board meeting? Because for a hybrid group, we can just do this online, right? Why are we having a monthly meeting that's just a board meeting and that board is spelled correct? We can do other things for in-person meetings, right? We can do rail fanning trips. We can do museum trips, right? We can meet at more train shows or do operating hours. An example of this, an NMRA division is doing this, and we'll talk about what NMRA divisions are doing, is that one guy in Cedar Rapids, great guy, he said, hey, you know what? Let's not do a board meeting this month. Let's rent a bus and go to the Illinois Railroad Museum. So they rented a bus, did a day trip, and they all went and got a private tour of the railway museums. They had 80 model railroaders on a bus doing that. That is the type of stuff that is going to get individuals wanting to be involved more, that type of stuff. So think outside the box, do different things than just the traditional monthly board meeting, because you can do that online or something like that. We did, right? And we'll talk a little bit about that. And I'll answer more questions on, I can answer more questions on what younger people think of the monthly board meetings, but I don't have a slide for that. But I want to talk about, and this is probably, I need to change the title, is post-COVID-19 champs. Who were the people who stood out for model railroading in the divisions? Number one is Piedmont in Atlanta. They did a very good job, right? They have hybrid, and the biggest thing is that they have hybrid and they're doing in person. They're also doing intro to model railroading seminars, and they're also doing train shows, meaning that they're connecting to the casual modeler, which is the whole point of this presentation. Number two is actually not my division, but the one over at Fort Worth. They are doing hybrid and they're doing in person. We do a lot of stuff together like 2023 in the Plano, but they've done an excellent job of getting back in and giving people options of that hybrid and also that online and in-person option. They did a great job. They also, Texas Western pre-COVID, it's not exist anymore. They actually had a youth and model railroading division there. So they were very active in the community. Rock River Valley Division in Rockford, Illinois. I know those guys. A lot of those guys do S-Fest, which is American Flyer. They actually, that division hosts, I'm not sure if they're doing hybrid right now, but they're doing train shows. Last year, they said, hey, you know what? Let's go and put a train show in a mall, because that's where a lot of people who don't really know about model railroading, but we're going to get a ton of foot traffic if we put a train show in a mall. And so these guys are thinking outside the box. They're a smaller division. They're a very small division, but they have a lot of people bouncing off ideas. Other clubs, what are other NMRA clubs doing? Big Bend, Tallahassee, they're doing hybrid and in person. They hosted train shows from last year. This is a great example. Sooner Division, which is an old TCA division, they host about 5 to 10 train shows per year for their division, and each member gets in for free. So they're giving their members a ton of benefits. South Texas Socials, that used to be an NMRA division, they're doing hybrid and in person, and they're doing mini conventions. So they're doing quarterlies, but they're doing a separate virtual thing and then in person. So they're basically saying, hey, it's free to come show up, and we'll have 3 clinics, in person and virtual, and then everybody open up their museums. And so you get to go tour SAMRA and everything else after lunch. So you can come and make a day of this. And lastly, the Youth and Model Railroading Division in Denver, they're in the Walters catalog. That's one of the, if you heard of their scholarship, you have to be in their group to get the scholarship. But they just had an event where they had 35 youth model railroaders show up, which some divisions don't even have 35 members, and they're getting people who are under 18 showing up. They do host train shows, and they also do they also have a hobby store that directly goes and funds their organization. So they're a very good group. Why are hybrid groups important? Because let's look at virtual groups. Virtual groups like Narrow Gauge and Jim Keller are basically free. They give out almost free clinics. They give out almost newsletters, free newsletters and magazines. They give out free Zoom meetings, like mostly free. Does this sound a lot like what NMRA does? Kind of, a little bit, right? If you go on Jim Keller's group, it's very similar, right? It's a lot of the similar people. Virtual groups, and this is happening outside the train community. So it's not just the train community, so don't freak out, but they are competing now against national organizations. While we don't like it, it is happening, right? In-person clubs, right? One-on-one mentoring, operating layout, access every day, and you're getting that community. Right now, the national organizations are kind of in the middle. They're in no man's land right now because you just created virtual groups over COVID, and now you got these permanent layout groups. You're in the middle, which is no man's land. So how do we take advantage of that? In the way is hybrid clubs, giving your members as many options as possible so you can have virtual like what we're doing and also in person. So you're doing the best of both worlds, and you're basically getting as almost as many benefits as both of those combined. You're getting the virtual clinics, you're getting the newsletters and magazines, you're getting the Zoom meetings, you're also getting in-person meetings, and you're doing one-on-one mentoring. So a mix of both. A great way to separate you from the virtual and just in person. An example of this would be virtual meetings Thursday nights. You do a Q&A. You have an out-of-town presenter like we're doing. You do tips and tricks, right? Possible board meeting. And then once a month, you do a hands-on clinic, hands-on tips and tricks, show and tell, things that are in person that other virtual groups or permit clubs can't provide. But this is the last thing, and I know I took a little bit of y'all's time. It's only been 40 minutes. But new members, right? New members are those casual modelers. They are beginners. They just want to have fun. They want to join a club. It takes 3 events for a new person to be a member. So if you have a new member, it takes about 3 events for them to officially want to be a member. So let's make it fun. Let's have fun. Let's look at this example. You're going to see this in 2023. This is a scratch building, and he wrote this in Sharpie and said, now open rail fan rooftop bar and grill. This is the first thing you see. The point is make things comfortable, welcoming, and fun for those first 3 meetings. So they're wanting to be a member. They're wanting to invest in your organization. Like we said, everyone starts at social. Everyone can get to casual. Let's look at this example here. I started scratch building a 1.5 years ago. This is a really crappy building, and this is now a new one that I did. And so there's a lot of improvement from this. And so while I've been in the hobby my entire life, I'm still improving and hopefully working my way up the AP program, right? It'll take me like 200 years, but I did make a good dent in it. AP program, I do want to talk about this a little bit, and this is my last section. Can somebody tell me, what does the AP program do for members?
It challenges a member to try something new.
I like where you're going with that. That's sort of right. I get a lot of it makes you a better model. Well,
Correct.
if you're a new member, do you really care if it makes you a better modeler? No, not really. You want to get track on a layout and start running your trains and then do that later. What does the AP really do? The main goal is it makes people stay longer in the NMRA. That is the main thing the AP program does. If you look at MMR, he's been here for like 30 years, right? And since it makes people stay longer, it gets people to jump into cardstock to intermediate and beyond, right? It makes people want to volunteer. It makes people want to give this type of stuff we're doing, clinics and presentations. And overall, it makes the NMRA more active as an organization because you have something like the AP program. So how do we start in it? Very few people do the AP program. Out of the entire hobby, very few people. Less than 1% of people in the hobby or in the world, less than 1% of the hobby is an MMR, right? There's only less than 1,000 of them all time. So this is a very small margin of people. We need to realize that. How do new people start in the AP program? Associated with what they like. Model trains, here's the same graph, and we added MMRs down here. Super extreme niche is the AP program. MMRs are way down here in their own category, right? But associate trains with something else. Scratch building. They're like history or design, or they're a mechanical engineer. Associate scratch building with that. AP volunteer. When you get involved in a group, that's a great way to start on your AP volunteer. Go and serve as a board member, as a division. Wanting to volunteer at train shows, this is a great way to get them involved. If they want to get involved in the community, get them started on AP, have them get somebody to sit down with them and explain what you actually need to do. Author, if you want to public speak or write articles or give a clinic, have them start on author. So associate trains what they want to do. At the end of the day, the AP program makes people stay longer in the NMRA. That's the whole point of the AP program. In my view, right? It is to become a better modeler, but from a business aspect, it gets people to pay for membership longer, right? And that's what we want. We want people to be more active. But if we look at the industry, we want hopefully everybody to be in this category. And we do want to help these guys jump to the 10%. And what happened over COVID is, since we're not outreaching, we're blocking off and having close community. And what eventually will happen is the people who aren't active to casual are slowly going to be close communities, and the people who are getting new members are going to be the sort of the new 10%, right? And it's a theory. It's sort of happening right now. We don't really know what's going on, right? It's just model raring, doesn't matter. But I do get a question on this a lot. And so the important thing is getting options, giving that flexibility members. And we need to remember that while this was a recruitment thing, the whole point of model rarity is really to have fun. And a lot of people forget about that, right? And so those are my takeaways. I really appreciate everybody for listening. I did go over a little bit on time, but if you guys have any questions, I'd love to, hear them.
We are kind of a closed hobby even before the pandemic, because unless you're thinking about going to a train show or unless you're thinking about going to a convention, you just don't. But if you get outside of the typical train show mindset and get yourself out there, get your club out there in places where there aren't necessarily people looking at trains, then you can help grow the hobby. So for example, one of the clubs that I've been involved in, we attended and set up at a holiday food and gift festival. And you get tons of people who aren't in the hobby, but when they walk by the train layout, they're like, oh man, trains, that's cool. So
I love that idea. I had that slide in there. I literally had like festivals on there and I deleted it this time. Yeah, but that's awesome to hear. That's awesome. I'd love to see more people do that.
So one of the obvious things that has been very effective for us and will continue to help make it grow, and that's the modular groups. They're in the train shows, and they're in lots of public places where people can see what the hobby is all about. My big thing is recruiting individuals who'll take on at least some piece of the action and do whatever I can to help them flourish. And so we've been pretty successful at that. There are a lot of people though that still haven't stepped up. But your program tonight is outstanding in terms of bringing some focus to some of the things we probably know already, but it's just not focused. And the issue of how to make people or help people transition into the 10% so that becomes 15 or 20% is a big part of at least my interest in the hobby in terms of helping it grow. So it's a question of how individual modelers feel about their activity and if they want to share it with other people, and if they need help in understanding how to do a better job of sharing it, that's where some of our leadership steps in.
I've noticed a lot of the younger people under 40 really like modular layouts, and that's a great way to get people involved because that is a fantastic stepping stone into a real layout. You don't need that much space, you don't need that much budget, and you can have a one-on-one mentor with you. And if you mess up, you can restart an hour, right? If you just have one module. And so a lot of younger people are really liking that. It's a great stepping stone.
Is the hybrid meeting the meeting of the future?
Yeah, yes and no. Well, depends on what context. A hybrid club where you have a virtual meeting and a virtual meeting and you have an in-person meeting with no Zoom, because what that does over time is 50-50 go on Zoom or go in person and the club disappears, right? And I saw that in college campuses because I just watched on Zoom because I can commute because of COVID. And so what happens is if you do hybrid long enough, if you do just the hybrid meeting long enough, it will dissolve. But if you do a hybrid option of just a virtual meeting and just an in-person meeting, it creates and gives people more options. And that's what I'm shooting for, I guess. That's what I want to push. So yeah.
What's your thoughts when you're having a in-person meeting and also broadcasting it at the same time?
It's weird because here's the thing, it's not the same, right? But if you look at college classes and lectures and stuff, if you have 50 people who are 50% who's like, you know what, I don't really want to be here. You have 50% that's in person and it's a discussion or something like about operations or something. That's not a really good discussion. The class kind of sucks. Can you take that to model railroading and you only have, if you have 20 members that go to meetings and you only have 10 people in there, that's sort of there. It works for different divisions, right? It's not the best way. It's not the worst way, but I'm not a big fan of the Zoom and also in person at the same time.
I would think that probably a hybrid would be better for like a demonstration versus an interactive type of meeting. You know what I'm saying? Like if you're going to do a demonstration and like people are there, as the chair of this clinic, I would like to just keep it virtual and then have like meetups every quarter or something in person and do something fun, like a make and take, or, a field trip to like
Absolutely, yeah.
a Ballard short line or something like that, I don't know, but yeah, just to kind of shake it up. But half of the people in this meeting that I've gotten to know would never show up to my clinic in person because they live too far away.
Mhm.
And I enjoy this regular meeting once a month and getting a chance to talk to y'all. And then I would like to schedule something maybe on a weekend that we can get together, that there would be a more possibility for you guys, other than the people from Alaska, obviously, to come to some place that we could do like a clinic field trip,
That's exactly what the San Antonio group, that used to be an NMRA group, does. They're like, you know what? Let's do a virtual in-person mini convention and just have a day of it. And a lot of people really like that.
Yeah.
I think that's where we're headed this year.